Okay, let me start. Microparameterizing verb stranding VP ellipsis with reference to Korean and Hindi Urdu. My name is Sun-Woong Kim from Gwangwon University, and this is the work done with my colleague Yeon Kim at Gwangju National University. Section 1, Introduction. It is generally agreed that 1a below is derived from 1b by deleting the VP in the angled bracket in English. Under the assumption that Korean has VP ellipsis, this paper discusses that example in 2 as an example of a verb stranding VP ellipsis, VVPE for short. Let us call to a typical example of missing argument sentences or object gap sentences in Korean. Beginning with Otani and Whitman 1991, a fair amount of research has been accumulated about the existence of VP ellipsis in Korean. This issue is closely related to the view that 2 is nothing but an example of argument ellipsis AE, about which the object of the second conjunct is simply deleted. This paper argues that Korean has VVPE in the spirit of Otani Whitman 1991, and that 2 is definitely the result of a VP ellipsis. What is notable is that Korean is analyzed as a language with a verb stranding, which is found in languages like Irish, Hebrew, Portuguese, Russian, and Hindi Urdu. Manetta, for example, Manetta 2019. Section 2, VP ellipsis in Korean. 3 different constructions are in order to be considered as VP in Korean: 3A, 3B, and 3C. Researchers take 3A as an example as VP ellipsis include Suwon Kim 1999 and Soyoung Park 2008, along with Funakoshi 2014 and 2016 and 2020 for Japanese, and 3B is supported by Myungwan Park 1997, who argues that what looks like a VP ellipsis in Korean is nothing but AE. Differently from these authors, Jung-Suk Kim 1997 in 2014 independently argue that 3C is a real example of a Korean VP ellipsis. For its derivation, Jung-Suk Kim 1997 argues that Korean has E support, or your support to be exact, in parallel with English do support. With regard to 3A alone, there has been 3 different analyses proposed. VVPE analysis, as in 4A, null pro analysis in 4B, and AE analysis in 4C. So this paper argues that 3 is derived from by moving the verb out of the elided VP to a higher position, where it is merged with tense morpheme and others, leaving a verb copy as in 4A. This VP, including verb copy and its complement, is deleted to derive 3A as its output. In contrast to this analysis, the proponents like Myungwan Park argue that the sentence must be understood as including pro in the form of null argument anaphora NAA, or understood as pro-analysis, as shown below in 5. Okay, in sum, we have sketched 3 possible strings as the counterpart of English type VP ellipsis. Among them, this paper presupposes that 3A is analyzed as a case of VVPE. So the next section discusses the proposed analysis in more detail. Number 3, previous studies. The proponents proponents of pro-analysis strongly argue that 3a is not a VP ellipsis example in Korean, but 3b is. Their argument is based on at least two possible pieces of evidence. The first is concerned with a morphological identity. The point is that the prerequisite for VVPE is the morphological match. 6 and 7 shows that the exact match, morphological match, is necessary. According to them, proper reading of 6a with respect to the antecedent clause 6a is 7a but not 7b, although 7b shows morphological match. From a morphological point of view, 6b cannot be an example of VVPE but a case of NAA or proof for the missing argument position. However, morphological match is not necessarily a prerequisite for VP ellipsis, as has been much discussed in the literature. The examples in A show that VP ellipsis is possible even when no exact morphological match is guaranteed. These examples are from Boston 1997. In addition, the following examples show that voice mismatch can also be found in VP ellipsis. Examples from Keller in 9. These data show that the morphological mismatch cannot be a reliable piece of evidence to determine whether a given string involves ellipsis or not, and which specific type of ellipsis is involved. The second data point is about the availability of a strict or or sloppy identity reading. Look at the following examples given in 10 and 11. To many Korean linguists, 10b is known to be interpreted as 11a, but not as 11b. In other words, the sloppy reading is not an option for 10b. However, many native speakers, as well as the authors, get a sloppy reading out of 10b. Jung-Suk Lee 2016 reports the same judgment as if you understand him correctly. This can be confirmed by the following example in 12. In the context where sloppy reading is forced, 12 is understood as a situation in which Bill read a letter that was addressed to him by Bill's friend. If understood properly, this means that 12 is a piece of evidence in favor of a sufficient analysis about 11b. In addition, regarding the interpretation of adverbs in VP ellipsis, consider the following from Jung-Suk Kim. J.S. Lee, 2016. Let me skip the examples. Differently from English, 13 has an adverb included meaning, as can be evidenced by the addition of proper backup phrases, as shown below in 14. If the original sentence is backed up by the succeeding addition, the adverb included reading becomes obvious. Although adverb inclusion test is a tool for VP ellipsis, however, it is not as solid as its purpose to be. In fact, Myung-Gat Park's 1997 observation, of course, is a matter for further consideration with respect to type of adverbials in adjunction possibilities of higher or lower VP. Sakamoto 2016 introduces the following examples. His Japanese examples are put into Korean. Number 15. According to him, 15a is ambiguous in that both or has wider scope over neg or the other way around reading, both are possible, while 15b is not. 15b is known to have only wide scope over or over-neg reading. In this regard, he concludes that neither pro-analysis nor VVPE analysis, but only AE can deal with the fact properly. This paper, however, supposes 15 does not run afoul of VVPE analysis. This is because the VVPE analysis assumes that 15A has a space structure and the ambiguity can be captured before a VP ellipsis in 15. Through the discussion so far, this paper has argued that NAA examples of Myung-Gun Park 2014 are in fact not genuine examples of NAA, and his argument does not nullify the proposal that 3A is actually a real VBPE example in Korean. So now the proposed analysis. This paper argues that Korean has real examples of VBPE. Several languages other than Korean and Japanese are reported to have VBPE. This section is to demonstrate that Korean is a real case of VBPE. This section deals with an important question of how to distinguish VVPE from AE if a language has both of them, like Russian, for example, as was argued to Gribanova in 2013, for example. In other words, this section deals with an important question about how to distinguish VBPE from AE. Okay, the first test is that distinguishes the two comes from what has to do with the conjunction or disjunction. Look at 16. 16b can be interpreted as meaning John has given an apple to Mary or a pear to Jane. 16b can also holds for the situation where John only gave an apple to Mary. This is explained only if the verb is stranded and the VP ellipsis, but is not explained under the analysis, which assumes an A or the pro object, since they predict that 16b means that John gave an apple to Mary or a pear to Jane, but not John only gave an apple to Mary. Second, with respect to the inclusion of adverbs in ellipsis, consider 17. Although 17b is ambiguous, it definitely has a reading that Bill read a paper twice. Under the textbook understanding about the clausal analysis, it is reasonable to conclude that the adverb is included in the elided VP and the remnant verb is a copy of the elided verb ik, which is read. This is in line with Simpson et al.'s 2013 discussion that temporal adverbials and VP adverbs modifying manner. When they are elided, they are optionally included. The verbs are optionally included in the ellipsis interpretation. If AE is involved in 17b, the adverbial would have no chance to be included during the derivation. Third, a related set of examples comes from the following in 18. In 18b, without contrastive intonation, intonation 18b would be illicit. If our interpretation about 18b is correct, then 18b turns out to be a strong supporting example of a VVPE in Korean, since the elided VP is morphologically distinct from the antecedent at the time of ellipsis. Recently, Funakoshi argues that Japanese has VBPE, contrary to the widely held view against it in Japanese. His argument centers around the possibility of adverb inclusion in VP ellipsis. Look at the following Korean example in 19. 19b is ambiguous in two ways. Okay, Manetta 2019. Manetta 2019 observes a similar view in Hindi Urdu. Similar data in Hindi Urdu which will be discussed shortly in section 5. This kind of adverb inclusion in VP ellipsis is also found in negative sentences. Look at 20 and 21. 20 has the reading in which both 20A and 20B are possible. This is the same with 20, where the adverb is optionally included in interpretation. Lastly, one more test is given in Gribanova 2000A and B regarding the availability of island conditions. VP ellipsis is known to be available with proper linguistic antecedent. It is widely known that ellipsis as a surface and efferent is a linguistic antecedent. The fact that 22B is grammatical demonstrates that it is a true example of VP ellipsis. In contrast, if the linguistic antecedent is not given, the same response sounds pretty awkward, as shown in 23B. 23B is infelicitous because it is uttered without a proper linguistic antecedent. A pragmatic antecedent is not enough to guarantee the island containing VP ellipsis, as was argued Hankamer and Saak early in 1967. 76. Based on these facts, this paper assumes that Korean is a VVPE language. The verb optionally moves to a higher head. It is a case where the verb is in the case where the verb is not raised, the copular verb E is inserted to save the otherwise stranded T. 24B prime is a kind of clauses that can be called as copular E support type VP ellipsis in Korean. Okay, let me skip 25 and through 26, 27. An additional support in favor of VVPE in Korean comes from idioms. Look at the following in 28. Examples in 28. Under the pro-analysis of AE or pro-analysis or AE analysis, it is implausible to do ellipsis with while maintaining idiomatic meaning. Under the VVPE analysis, in contrast, it is naturally explained by copying the verb out of VP as below. It is plausible to assume before copying, or at some point of the derivation, the verb and its object, 미역국을 먹다, forms a unit so that the idiomatic reading is available. Now, section 5, comparison with Hindi Urdu. The proposed analysis of this paper in favor of VVPE in Korean is supported cross-linguistically with respect to complex verbs. Consider the following two types of complex verb examples: V plus V type and N plus V type. When the verbs are put into VVP environments, the following is derived. Examples are given in 31. All examples are bad to Korean ears. But in contrast to Korean, Hindi Urdu complex predicates look different. 32 example from Maneta in 2019. This is and the examples Hindi Urdu counterparts to Korean are all grammatical. This is a clear contrast with the Korean. Examples are given in 33. The NV complex examples are grammatical on 33A and B, 30B. In 33, the Korean examples, in contrast to Hindi Urdu counterparts, the Korean examples are all grammatical. Now consider the NV complex, the NV complex in 33. In 33, we have different judgments. 34 below is NV complex predicates of Hindi Urdu. The data point that needs to be explained is the contrast between 31 and 31 to 32 and 33 to 34. Why is 31 ungrammatical? This depends on whether the verb has been raised or not. In Korean sentences, 보다 in 먹어 보다, and that in remnant, and the remnant 보다 have different meanings. That is, in 31, 보았다 in 메리도 보았다 is not a copy of the verb. This can be understood as an illicit insertion of the main verb 보다, where the auxiliary verb 보다 is not inserted. If the copular E is inserted, the result is grammatical, as given in 35. The examples in 33 show grammaticality difference. This is due to the fact that 공부 and 다림질 are different from 기억 or 사랑 in Korean meaning properties. 공부 or 다림질 denotes action, while 기억 and 사랑 does not. The former has a plus action feature, but the latter has minus action. This difference makes difference of the verb that's selected to each group. In other words, the former takes the heavy verb 하다, while the latter takes the light verb 하다. If the light verb is left as a remnant, the grammaticality of the whole string gets degraded. This has much to do with the mismatch between the meaning of the remnant and the lighted verb. If the coupler E is inserted again, the string becomes grammatical, as is expected. In contrast, the Korean, Hindi, Urdu shows no such difference. This is because the overt movement of the verb actually happens. Now, with respect to this difference, a speculation is in order. If the conclusion of this paper is extended, the following generalization can be captured in 37. DP languages like English tend to have verb including VP ellipsis, while MP languages like Korean and Hindi Urdu tend to have verb stranding VP ellipsis. This hypothetical generalization attracts further research based on empirical data from many different languages. Okay, let me skip section 6 for conclusion, and this is the end of our presentation, and thanks for listening. Thank you very much.